Hey, sorry, I missed my affirmations this morning with you guys. I love doing those. Was on a East Coast call. They're already 2 hours ahead. How many deals do you have in a contract?
I have one.
All right.
But you got 5
Hold on, so that was the next question I was gonna ask. And how many appointments did you set?
I set 5 in one day.
Ooh.
Wow.
I only set one yesterday, but I did set 5 in another day.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, that goes back to what I want to talk about. So, or goes to what I want to talk about. All right, so good to see all of you this morning, looking around the room. Nice shining faces. Jay, you smiling, shining? All right, just checking. All right. Okay, so as you guys know, I've been on this deal of prospecting, and that's not new. I think it is the lifeblood, it's the gasoline for the engine. But one of the things I find is that people, to your point, when is it you will do all these different things, and the way in which we prospect and the rules we put around our prospecting become really interesting, because they can either be really enlightening to us, or they can be really positive to us, or we find ourselves where we'll even kind of beat ourselves up a little bit with the rules that we set up with prospecting. And I can remember years ago, as I was a newer licensee, I got into this idea that I would prospect as long as I could. And I remember way back in 1994, which seems like forever. Some of you were not born yet, but I know that in here. But in 1994, as I was prospecting, I started with the one thing, which was the one thing I could control, was the amount of time that I prospected, because I didn't have much to do except for prospect. Now, I remember that I would make and I started doing what all agents do. I started creating things that I thought I needed to be doing, but I got really clear on the fact early on in my career, and not really from anybody telling me it. I just got real clear that the only way you win at this game is that you prospect a lot. And so my first year in real estate, I sold 33 homes, and there's a lot of people do a lot more business than that. It's just, I mean, I watch, but here's what I can watch, like a Lou Tran, and Lou Tran sold over 50 homes in her first year in business. And if you talk to her, and those of you who showed up, I think was it last week that she spoke. I might have been more than 50. I'm trying to remember. How many?
53.
53. Okay. But if you were to ask her, well, how did you do 53 homes in your first year in business? She'll talk about the fact, I'm sure she did. She'll talk about her prospecting. And she was even more relentless than me. I mean, if she didn't express, she talked about people kicking her off the doorsteps and telling her to go back to her own country, and all sorts of crazy, abusive and, and pathetic and horrible behavior from other people as she went out and started door knocking. And she did most of her prospecting from door knocking. So my first year in business, I usually made it a standard, and I'm not suggesting that you need to do this, because I don't talk this way in the sense that you have to do this, but I was making 100 contacts a day for a long period of time. I was 22 years old, and in fairness, I just was okay with people telling me how horrible I was and stop calling me and everything else. It just didn't seem to faze me, but I would make a lot of contacts. And in those contacts, of course, I didn't necessarily make a lot of appointments. But with all the contacts I made, with all the mistakes I was making, I started being able to make appointments. And then I started classifying it and saying, okay, what are the rules I'm going to make around the hours in which I prospect? And so I remember it was years later, I started realizing, man, if I had these rules to my prospecting, well, then I could be really successful. And it doesn't matter whether I'm Dylan and I'm doing lending, or Jim, or whether I'm Isabel right there and doing title and escrow. It doesn't matter. It's the same rules. They all apply. So for me, what I started doing was this. These became my rules, kind of my code of conduct to prospecting. And I haven't talked about this for a while, but I would challenge each one of you to do 3+ hours of prospecting. And then here's the key word in this, or. Because the thing is that one day, Quinn can make 5 appointments, and the next day he makes 1. And you may say, well, this is so basic. Well, it is so basic, but you got to ask yourself again, if it's so basic, it's the way we were saying this yesterday. Ruby and I were talking about this, what just is easy to do is just as easy not to do. And 3 hours may not seem that hard, or maybe it is hard, maybe it is easy. But the thing is that knowing that, hey, I'm going to spend this amount of time, and I'm going to get really focused on the time in which I'm going to do that. So for me, when I prospected way back in the day with, and some of you certainly know John Hunter. I mean, you know John Hunter, right? And John and I remember I came in and we made an agreement that we were going to prospect together. Now I find it interesting. Yesterday, I challenged April, by the way, Amy, to find a person to prospect with every single day. Now, I hope you're not in this room because I'm going to mock you, make fun of you, and kind of, you know, and I mean this, just 4 people. No, I got to prospect alone. And I thought how interesting it is that we are so egotistical, so prideful that we cannot prospect in front of other people. And we get so consumed. I can't have any distractions. I mean, just so you know, when I prospected, I had at least 4 or 5 people around me, and I always had music going. I had to have so much going on, like it was like going on a Vegas lights trip. I mean, I wanted commotion, distraction, because I'd get bored. And because I knew I was going to spend at least 3 or more hours prospecting. But I do remember when I first started this, we used to have these over in this building that's 2 buildings over, where I met Rick actually for the first time. And we were at the Coldwell Banker there when it was owned by the Webbers. And they had these little call booths, and we have some on the 2nd floor, at least I don't know, now they're closets. I don't know what they're doing with them. Are they calling rooms still?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
We still have some.
all right. Well, I used to go in there because I was so afraid, Jake, that anyone could possibly hear me prospect and make a fool of myself. So I want no one to hear me. And so I have to tell you, I don't know what happened, but I just somehow again, 22 years old, went, what am I doing? And I kind of just got some boldness, and I said, I'm going to sit right out there in the front of the cubicles. And around me, I had all of these experienced agents. I mean, they'd been in the business forever. I mean, I was around the Leslie Thorups. I was around the Joan Pates. I was around these legends of our industry in Utah. And I just simply said, I don't care what I sound like. I'm just going to do it. And so yesterday, I get a text from April, says, I asked 4 people, believe it or not one of them was willing to prospect together. What?
Great.
So first of all, I would just tell you that I figured out that if I just spent the time and I did it out in the open with people, that good things happened. And you know what? You're going to make mistakes, but you're going to be held highly accountable to the activity of the hours if you're doing it in front of people. So my first challenge to you is prospect in front of people. Stop being a secret agent. Stop thinking that you have some magical answer. You don't have any magical answer. The magic is talking to people. The magic is staying on the phone or knocking on a door. The number of times that I've said, hey, let's go out. Isabel, let's go out and knock doors right now. And we just go, I've knocked that neighbor, I've knocked that condo unit, who knows how many times, because I've worked in this area for 30 years. Then I just get at and go knock on doors. The neighborhoods behind those condos, I've knocked on those neighborhoods, who knows how many times. You'll say, you mean you just said, hey, Dylan, let's go knock doors right now. And someone like, not saying you do this, but Dylan, you mean like right now? Like, yeah, right now, let's go knock. Well, I need to prepare. I need a flight. You got a business card. Let's go. Knock, knock, knock. And so I just realized that the hours that you spend, and my general rule as my years went on, is I would spend hours on the phone in the morning, and I would always spend at least 1 hour a day during the afternoon knocking on doors, because I knew that I get my brain and my heart, my emotions in some really weird funk if I don't see people. So my rule of thumb is I have to see at least 2 people every single day. I got to see 2 people, not agents. They make it worse at times. I'm just kidding, right? I'm talking, I got to go see 2 people. And even if it's just, and like 2 people that I see at home. And my rule of thumb, and just as a little side note, and it wasn't going to necessarily, but I would just say that's the house. And I typically would do some level of an expired or for sale by owner. And I would just knock on, my rule of thumb was I want to knock on 5 of those doors a day. If I get deep into this, which we're getting deep into it, so let's just talk about it. And then either they answer, don't answer, whatever. And I kind of just do a gut check. And so Delilah, I'd say, you know what, does this seem like a neighborhood I'd like to, knock on? Yeah, seems like I should. This is what I do. I go I'd go 5 doors this way, and I'd cross, and then I'd do 10 doors this way, and then I'd cross, and I'd do 5 doors, and then I'd get in my car and drive away. And I did that every day. They may say, well, Was that effective? I don't know. Well, I was the #1 agent in the state of Utah. Seemed like it worked for me, even in the worst markets of the country. Seemed like, and the thing is interesting, I wasn't part of Century 21, but that is 21 doors, Jim. I don't know if you add that up. And I wasn't even part of Century 21 at the time, which is actually kind of ironic. All right. See, that is irony. People always use that word.
Just condition yourself.
That's right. That's right. Okay. But man, if you just did that once a day, because here's the deal, you'll see people. And I want to remind you that if you can connect at a deep enough level, the average person knows 7 people a year that will sell. Guys, everybody is a lead. Everybody. And somehow we get so fixated that we have to have an internet lead. Oh my gosh, there's not an internet lead. Well, they will know 7 people this year that will either buy or sell a piece of property. 7, the average person. So yeah, I found this to be really effective. People always, what was your door script? Knock, knock. Hi, my name is George Morris. I'm a local real estate agent in the area. And I was just knocking the area, just wanted to find out whether you were buying, or, oh my gosh, buying yourself, whether you were renting your home or whether you owned your home. Oh, we own. Great. Yeah, I'm just curious. Have you considered moving in it soon in the near future? I mean, it was that simple. It wasn't, it doesn't have to be that. If they said rent it, great. When do you plan on buying your own home? It was that simple. It wasn't complex, but I put in the time. And sometimes we're trying to avoid the time. We're trying to do so many other things that we avoid the very time that we should be doing this. So get really structured. My time was always basically 8:15. That's why we end, between 8 and 8:15, 8:15, or let's just say we'll do this 8:30 to 11:30. And I always have my little staff meeting. With my team, as I started to build it, those were the hours that we prospected. And then at 11:30, we had a stand-up meeting. No one could sit down in the meeting. And we stood in a circle around a conference room table. Because the moment you sit down, you'll say, hey, so how was your day? And so we were able to make that meeting 15 minutes. And that's getting deeper in the schedule. We'll do that later. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. But the time, people want to shortcut the time. So when you say you should, I don't say, but when you set 5, how many hours did you prospect?
I probably prospect like 5.5, 6.
So you average an appointment an hour. When you set the 1 yesterday, how many hours did you prospect?
I probably prospect about 4.5.
Okay, all right. Still great, right? Because you put in the time. I presume you picked up a few leads.
I did.
Yeah, and if you do you put in the time. So again, this is the one way I was able to do the one thing. I didn't want to feel bad, and I have to tell you, I wanted to celebrate my day because I knew that if I prospected, good things happen. So again, for me, 3+ hours of prospecting. Notice the plus. He said more than 3. Shockingly, I'm impressed. Not because you did it, but most agents are not doing that. So awesome, dude. Keep doing it. Second on this rule is I'm going to make a certain number of contacts. So for me, it was always 30+ contacts. Now, here's the thing that was interesting. I got so good at setting appointments, I could make 4 or 5 contacts and set an appointment and go, okay, I'm done. So it became really important that I amplified what I was doing because I knew there was something, a component to my time. There was a component to the amount of contacts I made. And then let's just jump to number 3, or set. And I through my career, I dabbled with this, but I mean, of course, it started off with 1 or more appointments. So some of you should just put 1+, but for me, it became always 2+, set 2+ appointments a day. Now, those were my rules. And all of a sudden I realized, man, if any one of those 3 things happen, because what would happen is sometimes I'd call the first person equal 1 appointment. I'd be like, all right, I'm done. I don't need to do any more today. It's like, wait a second here. If you would have done that, how many contacts were you in before you set your first appointments on when you set 5?
I was probably like 5 or 6 in.
So in most cases, people say, okay, I'm done. But if you'll focus on the hours and the contacts and increase the amount of appointments, then you can win the game every single day. And that's the key here, is making sure you win the game every single day. And if you did 3 or more hours of prospect, you put in the time, and let's just say, when I say more, and you did 1 hour during the afternoon where you knocked some doors and you made sure every day I'm going to see someone. And don't be afraid of these people. The for sale lenders expires. There's more of them coming out every day now, especially the expires. But even if you don't do that, don't worry about it. But I just tell you that, man, there is something to be said when you see people face to face. Be okay with being the dumbest guy in the room. Jack Welch, one of the greatest CEOs of our time, he's passed away. He took GE from a few billion of an industry of a company to multi-billion upon billions. I mean, one of the large, like 5 times the size of Microsoft when he passed away. He was a monster of a CEO. And he had a claim that he goes, be the dumbest guy in the room. And then the people say, well, what do you mean by be the dumbest guy in the room? The dumbest guy in the room asks lots of questions. And so all that prospecting is about, guys, is just asking questions. That's all that it's about. If in so many words, ask questions when you go here, right? How can I help you? What can I do to help you sell your house? What, do you know anybody? Have you thought about, some? I mean, it's just asking questions. Now, yes, how you look, how you connect, how you match rate to speech, how you do all sorts of other things, we can get into those skill sets. But some of us aren't even putting in the time, and then we're going, oh my gosh, well, what's this market going to do? Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I don't know if it's going to work. Well, I haven't sold a lot of homes, and now the market's even gotten worse. But then I'll ask you, that's what I always ask if you sat down with me one-on-one. Hey, just tell me about your day. So what does that look like? Because they first go, oh, it's so bad. It's so tough. Things are so difficult right now. And now, again, I can sit down with someone like Jessica Terry, right? With, who you work with. And she said, I'm having the best year of my life. And that's the fact. Because I just asked her. So that's interesting too, from her perspective. One person's doing extraordinarily well. Another person might be not doing so well. Well, what's the difference? And I can almost always tell you it has to do with what they're doing with their time, the level of structure that you put in. So again, just look at your structure of your day, of your life, and just ask yourself, is your prospecting actually structured? And I got ahead of myself, Amy. I was saying, remember John Hunter? We'll talk about that structure, and I didn't share the rest of the story, but this 3+ hours, I remember John Hunter and I made a deal that we were going to prospect from 8:30. This is way back in the day, but it was 10:30, so it was only 2 hours. And we had all these checks. We had 5 of them. 5 of them thumbtacked on the wall, and each one of them was $100. And we put a little contract together that went a little bit like this. If you don't show up at 8:30 and are on your phone, you lose $100. If you answer an email, voicemail, or text, actually, they didn't have texting back then, but any of those things, or you answer a call where you get paged even from the front desk, you lose $100. If you don't have at least 7 days of advanced notice that you're not going to be here, meaning it was a planned day. It wasn't that you couldn't go on a vacation. It was just the fact that if you didn't show up the next day and you didn't let me know, then you lose $100. Well, in that entire year, I lost $200. And one of my favorite still stories, some of you have heard this, is he came in and I lost $100 because I had to go on an inspection. Now you think, well, wait, you had to go on an inspection, but friendly, I didn't give him 7 days notice. So I lost $100, and $100 20 years ago, that seemed, $100 to now is still a little bit of money. And $100 back then was even a lot more money. And I remember I lost $100. The next day he came in and he had his shoes, these brand new shoes on. And in between his shoe, right here where it says, Cole Haan, he had compliments of George Morris. He had written it in magic marker, a permanent marker. And he loved those shoes. Show everybody, look, read that. Compliments, George Morris. But that year was the first year for me back in that day, 20 years ago, where I made over 300 grand. And I remember, I thought, man, was it worth the $200 that I lost? And the answer was, well, of course it was. Because it put structure to my day. And some of you are prospecting when you feel like it or don't feel like it. Knocking doors when you feel like it, don't feel like it. Talking to people when you feel like it or don't feel like it. And you just kind of let it be whenever it's going to be. And I'm not saying that's everyone in this room, But I can just tell you this, man, the more structure you put to your day, the more freedom you will have. And those of you who even saw, how many of you saw Brian Burnett last week? Some of you were like, oh, I have to tell you, I've been so mindful of that. I've been thinking, okay, he's asleep right now. Right? I mean, you know, I was walking out of Shields last night, preparing for a trip. Fine, it seems like the whole store, and it was 8:55, and I'm thinking, okay, in 5 minutes, Brian's asleep. I mean, I said that to myself, Ruby, because I was thinking to myself, I even need to get back to more structure of my day. And I as I thought about that, and so I did, man, I came right back home because I reminded myself, structure. So I was in bed and asleep by 10:30 last night, which in fairness is pretty early for me, just because of everything that I've got going, but I made it a priority. Got up early, was on conference calls early this morning, doing my thing. And my point is that the more structure that I put in place, the better my life comes. And I just tell you that one aha I have again, I said it in the day after the summit, is discipline equals freedom. You want more freedom, get more disciplined. Disciplined in the areas of your life. Put structure to your prospecting. The days of one day doing it, one day not, try to do it this afternoon, maybe if I can this morning, I'll get to it when I can, is always problematic. Put massive structure, which will be disciplined, and the freedom will come not only because of your schedule, but there will be the economic freedom that you create. All right, guys, good?
Yep.
Any questions, thoughts?
I wanted to say something.
Yes, please.
When I first got hired on, you guys, if we just had the second floor, and there was like 80 cubicles just on the right side of the building. And when after our morning meeting, when I first joined, I'm like, okay, well, here's a cubicle and everyone is prospecting. So there's a different power to prospect around like-minded people in your environment.
Together.
Because then you know that you're not alone. Everyone's going through the same objections. Everyone's going through the same struggles of prospecting, and you overcome them more with the power of who you surround yourself with. So I just wanted, and can you imagine John Stein coming and plugging in with you? I was like, oh my gosh, I actually hung up on someone while he was listening to me. He made fun of me for like 3 weeks in meetings, and we still joke.
I do remember that actually.
Yeah, can you imagine watching John Stein walking up and plugging into your phone? I'm like, oh my gosh. I thought he was on the phone. I was like freaking out that he's listening to me. But actually, I got really good because listening to other people around me too, saying, hey, that was a great way to say something. Just like role play,
Oh yeah.
you know, impacts you and the way you say things, you realize that you're not the only one that's struggling on those same objections. So you just learn more. So just have the power of prospecting. That's surprising that no one wants to prospect with April because she's amazing.
We have a place
Yeah.
that we're good.
Yeah, it's on
I have to echo that. We call it the shit, and I learned so much from Alma
Right.
and Joe Reardon.
Right.
John, it was awesome.
Right.
And you-
I've said this, the worst thing that an agent can do is to have and be in their office.
Yeah.
For sure.
And they're like, well, I like my office. It's no distraction. Yes, to distract you, to make sure you don't do the one thing that allows you to succeed in this business, which is prospect.
The old place we had a siren.
Yeah, pardon?
The old place we had a siren.
Oh, yeah. Siren, bells, and remember the bell that was right there? Yeah, yeah. You guys, I look, the reason the passion for all this right now is because we're moving into a market that if you don't figure out how to be effective at high levels of prospecting, you're going to be deeply impacted economically. But if you will do the things that we're talking about, and Rick and Ruby and others are talking about, and Jason, you won't miss a beat. You will be like, I didn't even know we had a bad market.
Right.
And that's the beauty of the fact of controlling. The reason I love this is I was able to control my own future, my own destiny, because of what I chose to do and the structures that I put into place. Okay, guys. All right, here we go. Let's do some math.